Let me see. Hi. Sorry, I was in the middle of something. I'll take care of this later. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Scherer, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and the co-host of this month's episode of the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting, usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals, with about 5,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. The host of today's SBE WEBxtra is SBE board member Kirk Harnack, who is also the chair of the SBE Social Networking Committee. Good afternoon, Kirk.
Good afternoon, Chris. It's so good to see you, and good to see you watching live or by playback. I am Kirk Harnack, and I'm smiling ear to ear because we've got a topic today that is not only fun, but informative and interesting, and we're all going to learn things that maybe we forgot 20 or 25 years ago, and maybe we'll learn something we didn't know before. I think that'll be the case for a lot of us. What are we talking about? Well, Chris has done an amazing thing. Chris here really arranged for this show. He even went and got the B-roll video that we're going to enjoy while we talk to our two guests today. And our two guests, we can put up on the screen right now. This is Monty Chaney and Steve Stepp, both of National Audio Company in Springfield, Missouri. Monty and Steve, hello. It's good to see you.
Hello there. Good to see you. Monty, by the way, is the good-looking one without hair.
Okay, well, Steve, you know what I say. Well, you don't know what I say, but I say it a lot. God made a lot of heads, and all the ugly ones he covered with hair. So there you go.
Okay.
So Monty and Steve are going to be with us right after our member update. Monty and Steve have a business that, they found a niche, and boy, are they filling it. And that's what today's show is all about. I'm going to keep the exact topic a little bit of a secret. Please stay tuned, because you're gonna, if you're an engineer, if you're an audio aficionado, if you have ever listened to audio in your car maybe 20, 25 years ago or more, maybe 30 years ago, oh my gosh, you're gonna love this show, because hey, could be making a comeback. Chris Scherer has today's member update. Chris, good to see you again.
Yes, I do, and good to see you as well. Here's your SBE member update for March 21st, 2022. The next live webinars by SBE is on March 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern. The topic is Containerized Software, Why Broadcasters Are Moving to Standardized Software Infrastructure. What does that mean? Well, software containers are taking modern business and broadcast infrastructure to the next level. Radio and TV stations are deploying the same technologies as many major corporations. And you might even know the presenter, someone we all know. Kirk Harnack will detail how this technology is emerging into broadcast operations. Beginning in April, Webinars by SBE will launch a new 8-part series on CBNT and CBNE study topics. The SBE Broadcast Networking Certification exams evaluate many aspects of the IT side of broadcasting, and Wayne Pacina will cover several key areas of study to help you prepare to take the SBE CBNT or CBNE certification exam. For information on these and all the webinars by SBE, go to sbe.org/webinars. The next SBE certification exam window at local chapters is in June. The application deadline for that exam session is April 15th. If a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or just not possible because of in-person restrictions, private proctoring is available. More information on SBE certification is online at sbe.org/certification. And the SBE National Awards Program recognizes those who have contributed to the SBE, the industry, or their chapters in a number of categories. Winners are presented awards at the National Awards Dinner at the annual SBE National Meeting. Some SBE members go above and beyond the call of duty to their job and the SBE and the broadcast industry. There are local chapters that do an excellent job serving their members. Often these efforts go unrecognized. Don't let that happen this year. Complete an awards nomination form and recognize a deserving individual or chapter. Get more info and get access to all the forms at sbe.org/awards. The annual SBE membership drive began March 1st and runs until the end of May. When you recruit new members, you not only help the SBE, but you can win prizes for your efforts. The grand prize is a trip to the SBE National Meeting in the fall. Even if you don't win a prize, though, you can still win a prize in the drawing. You can still win because each approved new member application you sponsor will earn you $5 off your 2023 membership dues. If you recruit 3 or more regular or associate members or 1 sustaining member, you'll also receive an upgrade to SBE Member Plus for the remainder of this year. Applications must be received at the SBE National Office between March 1st and May 31st. Get more info on the membership drive at sbe.org/drive. And finally, the NAB show is fast approaching. The SBE will be there. Some committees will meet. The SBE Board of Directors will meet, and will hold the usual membership meeting and membership reception. All the details on the SBE and what and where are on the SBE website at sbe.org/NAB. And that is your SBE member update for March 21st, 2022. Kirk.
Chris, thank you, and I want to thank you again in advance for arranging for this particular Webxtra. Chris, you know what? I can't keep the topic a secret any longer. Maybe people who've read the invitation already know. I want to bring Monty and Steve back in and just give us the elevator pitch about what they do, and then we'll have some questions, and we'll have lots of B-roll video. We'll see what they do along with narration from the experts and Chris as well. So Monty and Steve, if you would please give us the elevator pitch about what the heck do you guys do?
We manufacture audio cassette tape. We manufacture duplicated recorded audio cassettes for the major record labels and over 4,000 independent labels worldwide. We also make blank tape available to our competitors who also do duplication worldwide. That's the short story. The long story here falls upon Monty. We maintain 50-year-old equipment to do this with because this is not something we've invented. We have restored not only tape coding lines, but duplication lines. This is not like the equipment that you heard tapes made on before. This is the equipment you heard tapes made on in the heyday of the audio cassette. So, Monty, I'll throw it to you.
Well, we gather up all the dry product and chemicals that actually go into this, the polyurethanes, and we bring them in here, and we have a milling room where we actually mix the tape. And there's a continual search on for product. And we bring all the stuff in as dries or as as both materials, and we mill the oxides and turn this into a very high quality polyurethane varnish and apply the oxide to that. And then the second product is we go out and we coat it onto the 48 gauge tape. And that's the basic product of making 6.5-inch wide tape.
We're going to have some video that Chris Scherer shot about this 6.5-inch wide tape, and then it gets cut down to cassette. It's just amazing. And I got to ask Chris, are you sure you didn't schedule this Webxtra for March of 1987? Because it feels like the technology I was using then.
Yeah, because the web was so prolific in 1987, so this is perfectly suited for that opportunity. And I had a little teaser at the beginning when I visited the facility in Springfield, Missouri. I was given a little souvenir to take home of some of the scrap here. But once I got home, I remembered I still have some brand new stock, unused, sitting on a shelf here, actually some reel-to-reel too, but I have a few cassettes still available as well. So I'm not ready to be a customer just yet, but I may be calling them soon as I restart my cassette collection. So
somewhere I've got some air checks, and nobody wants to hear those on cassette. Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, hey, without further ado, we got quite a bit. Chris, I think we have a little humor to kick things off, don't we?
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen them before. A couple of comic cartoons have been making the rounds, and I went ahead and grabbed those. One of them has to do with, it involves a pencil. Imagine a cassette tape going to the ER. Suncast, if you happen to have that available. There you go. Pencil, please, as we all try to get the guts back inside the cassette tape. I'm sure we've all encountered that at some point or another, having to wind it. And then there's the other one that kind of talks about it makes fun of the legacy of the cassette. Luke, the Nano, talking to Darth the cassette, I'm your father. So
I can hear him.
A little bit of fun, whether it's a pencil or a Bic pen or whatever you had. Always came in handy.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true. All right. Giggles galore, but this is serious business. Manufacturing raw tape stock and then slitting it and then duplicating it. And I thought, I always thought that the duplicating happened after it got into the cassette shell, but apparently I'm all wrong. I couldn't run one of these businesses. So, hey, before we get farther along, Monty and Steve, I'm told by our producer, you guys need to be way up closer to the microphone. We need, especially Monty. Monty, you must be one of those guys that speaks softly and carries a big stick, but we need you to speak up more. Yeah, all right. All right.
Well, it's a cassette. He carries a big pencil.
That's right. All right. Well, Chris, why don't you direct our progress from this point on here, and I'll just be the peanut gallery.
Well, I'm based. While the SBE headquarters is in Indianapolis, I'm actually based in Kansas City, and National Audio Company is just a couple hours down the road from me in Springfield, Missouri. So I figured, why not pop down there for an afternoon, or actually a morning. Get some video facility, and we can do more than just talk about cassette, or actually tape manufacturing, cassette loading and duplication, but actually show them a little bit. And while all the video it's actually not all mine. I had a little problem with my recorder on a couple of steps, so I asked Monty and pals to get me a little bit of video, which actually we're going to see in this first one. It's video number 1, the manufacturing line, which shows the process of creating magnetic tape and how it gets from the original materials all the way down to the little slivers of stuff that we've all come to know and hopefully love. So Suncast, if you could roll number 1, and then Steve and Monty can tell us what we're looking at here. We start on tape line manufacturing 1.
This is our, let's see.
Well, you're looking at the clear 48 gauge base film being unrolled at the coating head. This is where we measure the tension on that roll to help control it before we get into the coating process. You'll see the clear film going into the coating head here. The oxide slurry is being fed through those tubes that you see into the coating head. And now you see the brown substance being applied to the clear line at the back. Looks kind of spotty at first, then it goes under some smoothing rods. And all at one time, we have nice, smooth tape coating edge to edge. So that's the
and those
front end of the
smoothing
line.
rods are made of glass, yes?
They are made of glass. There are two, one to pretty much level it out all the way across, the second to do the fine smoothing. Then it's going through the natural magnet. Tell us about those magnets.
The purpose of the magnets is to make a cross field, North Pole to North Pole, intense magnetic field, and that makes the molecules separate so they're not crossed up. They're all lined up in individual rows inside the coating, and it improves the high frequency response.
And now you're looking at the coating ovens. We have 48 feet of coating ovens, and from the time that the tape enters those ovens at any given point, 8.4 seconds later, it exits the far end completely dry. The tape doesn't touch anything in those ovens. It floats on air all the way through there. And Monty is running them at approximately 200 feet of tape per minute on a 6.5-inch wide web. Monty, I'll let you explain the Krypton device next and the other end here, all right?
When we get out of the ovens, we have a steering device that makes sure everything's square with the world. The film isn't tracking off either way. That's the coast unit you see in the center of the video there, and it actually makes sure the film is squared up. And then in this area right here, we have a little round box mounted on the bottom of the metal bracket there, and that has a piece of Krypton 85 in it. It's about the size of the point of a pin, and it it actually is spewing its decay rate up through the film, and we have a normalized attenuation factor from the film itself. So any further attenuation is caused by the amount of coating that we have on the film. We have an algorithm that converts that into a direct micron measurement of how much coating we're putting on the film at any given point in time. Have a static spoiler there with the fur on it, and then we turn it around and we have the light panel behind it, which we've lost there, but the light panel, it indicates with the TV camera up there, if there's any pinholes or anything in the film or in the coating, it'll show up on the TV camera, and they have a monitor at the other end of the line. They monitor that. And then we take it down and roll it up.
That's the take-up unit there. We'll have a 10,000-foot roll of 6.5-inch wide tape when we're finished here. And it's we can view it from the far end, from the coating head. The operator up there has a monitor where he's actually seeing the picture being taken by the camera at this end. He also has graphs of the thickness of the oxide coating the entire way to compare to it. Monty, I'll let you take over here. This is line number 2.
This is our second line, and it has it's against slot die coater, just much the same as the other is. It's just in a different configuration. That's the supply of the film, and then we have our tensioning system on it, and we have a larger drum on it, and again a slot die coater and the smoothing bars with the 2 glass rods, just pretty much the same as the other one. And we come out of there with the wet film. There's our polarizing magnets in the center of the video, and then it goes into the ovens, and these just 2 ovens on this one. Now they're having the 6 ovens on the other side. Actually, it's in an aerodynamic curve, just like the top of an aircraft wing is. They give the film lift all the way through. This one's short enough we can keep it floating. And at the other end, we have the same device to use for the Krypton 85 to measure the thickness. It's kind of lost in the shadows there. That come off, and we center it back up, and we roll it up on our take-up. And again, we got a 6.5-inch wide roll of things. This is the room of metal. It's self-cut up into 42 little strips. We take the 2 outside stripes off of it and take them off its waste and send them back into a vacuum cleaner project. And the other 40 pieces that are left are brought up and fanned out to where they'll line up with the clutches on the take-ups and are wound up as the individual slit items. Those the blade box, which is back off to the right here, is the big secret here. It's got silicon carbide blades in it. And they cut it up, slit it cleanly. Each one of those rolls it's taking up has a magnetic clutch on it, so the shaft is running uniform speed, and then it's the tension of the tape will control the speed at which it's rewound, so it keeps it packed at the same density.
That's very important because 1/8-inch wide tape on a 10.5-inch wide pancake or reel depends upon proper tension when it's wound, or you can't handle it. You'll end up with a pile of brown spaghetti, and especially when we're talking about shipping this internationally. So it's very important that those rolls be wound with proper tension throughout, and that's the whole struggle right here. We have 2 identical machines, except that they're different colors. These were built by Duesenberry back in the 1990s, Monty?
80s and 90s.
This is some of our newer equipment, 1980s and 90s, our newer equipment. The coating lines you saw were 1968 vintage, and Monty, I will brag on him, he got those in not so great condition. They'd been used to make credit card strips and parking tickets and everything magnetic since they left the tape factory, and Monty restored those to 1968 new condition, so that's a feather in his cap.
We discovered how to actually chip hard set plastic out of pipe while we were making this. All the adhesives and everything had been left in them when we shut them down, so it was quite an interesting experience. It took about a year.
Chris, at some point, do we get to talk about the tape formulations of the, because I remember as a cassette buyer back in the 80s and 90s, there were different formulations you could buy. Do we have a section talking about that?
We don't have video, but Steve and Monty could certainly just talk about that right now for sure, absolutely. So tell us about the formulations you make, Steve and Monty.
I will start, and Monty may want to tell you about all the trials of getting it done, all right? We make 3 tapes here. All our cassette tapes. We make 2 types of ferric tape, or type 1, normal bias, and we make one Type 2 high bias tape. Let's talk about the Ferric tapes first. We make a 330 and a 380 Oersted tape. This is the coercivity measurement of the tape. The home user needs a 380 Oersted tape because that matches all the old decks made in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And if you have just a preset position for high and low or high and normal or whatever it may be on your deck, when you get into normal position, that's a 380 Oersted tape. So we make a tape for that usage. That's what all of our competitors are still making. But we knew that our main use was going to be for the music market. And so we also came up with an oxide at 330 Oersteds that will give us much more dynamic range, a lot more headroom or signal to noise than a standard Ferric tape. It doesn't play very well as far as a recording tape on the home user's decks. But boy, does it sound good when it's been recorded right on big reel-to-reel duplicators. So that's the two types of Ferric tape we make. We sell both to our competitors. And then we make a third tape, a Cobalt Tape, Type 2. Nobody's making a chrome tape anymore because of the EPA regulations and getting rid of the byproducts and so on. But the Cobalt Tape will give you the super high output you remember from a chrome tape, better mid-range and better bass frequencies than the chrome used to give you. And it still performs on decks like for instance, the Tascam Porta Studios were built only to use a Type 2 tape. For the last 20 years, no new tape has been made for those decks. So people have really been hunting for new old stock. And Tascam came to us. We had a joint project with them, and we brought back a tape that works well in those machines. So that's the three tapes we make. I'll give you a little pitch why, and then I'll turn it over to Monty about the trials and tribulations of doing this. But December of 2016, we were told by Seihan, the last manufacturer of quality music-grade cassette tape, they were going to stop making tape. And we said, how much have you got left? And they had 300,000 reels, and we said, ship it. And I looked at my son. He and I were sitting there together one night, and I said, Bill, we've either got to get out of business or we've got to make tape, one or the other. And being of the stubborn sorts and not knowing how difficult it was going to be to make tape, we said, okay, we'll make tape. And that's it. So we did come up with the music grade tape that far surpasses anything that's been made in a Type 1 tape before. We have a good Type 1 that works in the home user's decks, and then the Type 2 works either on high-speed duplication lines or on the home user's decks. So those are the three tapes we make. We make tape because we couldn't buy good tape anymore, and so we learned with the assistance of some of the old hands of some of the better tape companies in the past how to formulate tape, how to work with it, how to prepare the oxides, and so on. I'll throw it back to Monty. He can tell you how. I just tell you what we do, and Monty can take credit for doing it.
We actually get the iron oxide in as it's just a powder, and then we actually make a binding agent that we can apply through the slot die coaters that makes a nice smooth coating. So we have a complete mill room back in they're hiding off in the northeast corner of the tape facility here. All the dry products come together and get mixed together with the solvents for the polyurethane, and we mill it, and we check the density and do drawdowns and tape viscosity measurements on it long before it ever goes to the line. And as we get new oxides or various types of different oxides in, we have a vibrating sample magnetometer that we can actually shake the field, shake the tape within a very intense magnetic field, and pick up the coercivity and all the mechanical characteristics of the tape and the retentivity. So we have some idea of what we're going to get whenever we go into the experimental mode, but then we have to fine-tune that individual tape and that oxide to match them all together. Where they coat smoothly, they have good background properties, and good frequency response. That big old VSM sits back in the corner of the lab up there, and you kind of sit there and says, the old commentary of stop a clock, it will. It makes a big enough magnetic field that it'll stop all the magnetic clocks or take the hairsprings right out of all the watches within its range. It makes about 10 Teslas a field, and it becomes quite entertaining sometimes. We couldn't figure out why our clock was quitting in the lab all the time. until we thought about it for about 30 seconds one day and said, oh, yeah, we're sitting here just shaking the insides of it apart. But, that's the drying time has been amazingly consistent through the years, through the different types of tape. The 48-foot is an adequate drying time, and that's been a miracle and a blessing and on the same time. And as we take the tape through it, and I was thinking about Chris when we were talking about him bringing a sample home. If we had just known when he was leaving the facility here, we could have packed his car completely full of that sample, and he would have been well done for having tape samples for the rest of his life. But when we get all the way down to the end, and after the trimmings and things like that, what becomes a while. But it has become quite a project. There's a continual ongoing project of sampling the oxides as we get them in to make sure they're good, and they follow the same VSM characteristics of the batch before. And the thing with the Cobalt tape is it is a tape that we call it a thirsty tape. It takes a ton of solvent. We don't know where it goes. It just loves to eat solvent. It drinks it up like Coca-Cola. You just have to keep thinning it out to get it to where it'll go.
I'll tell you one thing we really are proud of, and Monty is the stickler for this. I'll brag on him a little bit. Out of every jumbo that you saw coated, the 6.5-inch jumbo, we'll end up with up to 40 reels of tape. And it is our absolute rule. One of those 40 reels is pulled at random, taken into the lab, put on a specially adjusted Studer A80 deck, and we measure the audio performance of that reel of tape. We measure all the way from 64 hertz up to 16K. We also, that's what we call our 10-tone, and then we measure the reference level, the output of that tape. We log every single jumbo we make, and our variance that we allow is plus or minus 1 dB. The theory is this: if you buy a box today of our Cobalt tape, and you buy a box next year of our Cobalt tape, it should be plus or minus 1 dB identical in performance. What that means is, if you're a professional duplicator running open reel duplicating equipment, and you'll see some of that pretty soon, you don't have to readjust your bias, your equalization, or anything else. You adjust for type 2 tape, the way your equipment's set up, and you're there. Same thing with the Ferric tape. It's very important that that reel of tape be identical to the same type of tape we made last year and that we will make next year. And if it doesn't, it becomes what we call magazine tape. No music, don't sell it to anybody. If you're recording audio magazines at 15/16 IPS with a high frequency of 5,000 cycles, it can handle that and nobody can hear the difference. It's just magazine tape. But we're very sticky about that, and Monty rides herd on it every day. And if you're going to work in the tape department here, you're going to know how to test tape on the Studers.
Excellent.
Studers never forget.
Speaking of a sample,
man,
I was going to say, speaking of a sample,
I'm going to move on
Steve,
to the mastering. Yeah,
sure, we will. But I was going to say, Steve, hold up that sample cassette with the for the Tascam. We'll have a little blast from the past. There you go, with the mini open reels. So the cassette shells are injection molded in Italy, you told us, but those little mini reels are 3D printed.
They are not only 3D printed, they're 3D manufactured. This is a replica of a cassette made in the 1980s for Tascam, somewhere in Asia, and this is their 50th anniversary. They wanted to bring back the tape for the Porta Studio, and they came to us and said, "Are you interested in helping us do it?" I'm sorry, I'm holding it in the wrong place. And
bring it up. There you go.
There we go.
There
All
it is.
right. Okay. And so we have replicated not only the tape but the cassette. And with
Excellent.
different oxides available now than were available in the 1980s, it's not an identical tape to what they used then, but it is the only tape manufactured in the last 20 years that is a good bias and EQ match for the Porta Studio. So we were proud that Tascam came to us for this, and we were happy to deliver, and we're starting manufacturing another batch today for them, Monty.
Wow, I tell you,
So
Steve
as we
and Monty are bringing sexy back. with that
Take a
cassette
look
with
at
the reels.
this.
That was my favorite. That was
So
like a
as we
kid watching
step-
a wash machine go around. I could watch those reels go around and around in that cassette. I just love
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
Yep. So as we step through the process, once the tape is manufactured, let's say we're stepping through the process of delivering a manufactured cassette to the consumer. There's a mastering process, but we're going to jump into the duplication. And you had mentioned open reel duplication systems, and that's in our case video number 3 for the behind the scenes people. If we could roll that, and then you can tell us what we're seeing in as far as the machinery and the process, and especially what I'm curious, the tape speed of duplication.
That's right. Well, you're looking, first of all, at one of our Studer A80 test decks right on the duplication line. We also pull duplicated pancakes or hubs of tape off the line and test them at real time, both on the 10-tone and with the output. But that's located next to the master bin that drives the duplicating recorders. We are running at 150 inches per second. And there you go. There you see some of the duplication recorders. There are 20 on each line. We can run 1, 2, 3, or all 20 at one time. And Monty can explain to you how we manage. Somebody, I think Chris asked the other day, how do you manage high frequencies at 150 IPS? It's 80 times speed. We record left and right channel on side 1, left and right channel on side 2, all simultaneously at 80 times speed. So Monty, I'll let you explain how that 8 meg head comes into play.
Very narrow, big pole pieces on the head and 8 megahertz audio bandpass.
Oof.
That's the secret.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because
These
every
are
doubling in
Scotland-
speed is an octave. So if you're, what's your highest frequency playback? Did you say 16 kilohertz? Did I hear?
We test up to 16. Actually, these machines are capable of probably 20.
Okay.
We've got original Saki Duracore ferrite heads in here. When those heads were new, they sold for $3,000 each, and there are 2 of them on each machine. And we've been very fortunate to buy up literally hundreds of those because they're not made anymore. So that's something that we careful control of, and we have them relapped as long as we possibly can. There's one of the duplicators running, and if you can see the actual reel spinning there, you can see the size of the flutter arms that keep the wow and flutter down. Our wow and flutter is far better than it would be on a cassette there. And the audio is just, it's really excellent.
Also, take a look at that 1.5-inch diameter capstan. And so
Right. Yeah. As compared to maybe a 16th inch
16th inch
on a cassette
cassette,
deck. So it's,
Sure.
it's a lot of difference there.
And so this shot of the gentleman here, he's actually just doing a quality control check of something that's already been duplicated. So he's looking at something that just came off the duplication.
Right. We very seldom hear anything come off of those duplicators that isn't identical to the master. But that is, we still do another test right there.
Great.
These were built in the 1970s. This is some of our older equipment. These are Electrosound Model 8000 duplicators. And this is what most of the major record labels ran when they had their own duplication houses. We're now duplicating for the same people who used to own these machines.
Oh, wow.
Huh.
We have on the
Interesting.
floor, we have 100 of those duplicators on the floor, and then we have some duplicators called Lyrics, and I think we have either 18 or 21 of those on the floor. They do the same thing. They're just a vertical machine. They were built, I think, in Switzerland, or
yeah, they're Swiss.
that's where they were built. But about 120 duplicating decks on the floor and more in reserve. We'll talk about those later.
Sure. So now that we have duplicated pancakes of cassettes of a program, and there are obviously, one pancake holds multiple copies of the same program, and I believe there's a subaudible tone separating each one. Is that right?
6 cycles at what,
6
minus
hertz.
20? 6 hertz at what, minus 20? Or
How
what is
about
it?
a minus 20, minus
Yeah.
20
That's-
or less.
that's
So you
the
got to
control
have really,
tone that
really
was
good ears to
ordered.
hear it.
Well, we don't have to hear it, but our loading machines do hear that with the Q head.
Which is the next video we're going to see. We're going to walk, it's on the same floor as we are as these duplicating machines, but we're going to walk over to the other side of that floor, and there's a cassette loading machine is operating. That's number 4, the loading video, which will pop up here in a moment. And I do know that this was, the lady operating the machine said she slowed it down so I could see it function, but go ahead and take it from there, Steve and Monty.
Well, I'll say it Monty say a lot because Monty has worked on all these machines. Barb here is a pro. She's been with us several years, and she is our top duplicator of all the people who run and do this type of equipment. We're going to take the pancake of tape you see loaded onto the machine. The cassettes are loaded in a hopper, and the machine will extract the leader out of one cassette, lay it in a splice block, splice the tape on, load it in, bring another cassette down, and prepare it the same way. This is probably listening for a control tone to tell the machine where to start one copy and then stop right there and splice. It's queued up for the next one. To give you an idea of the recording of the playback speed here, or the running speed, we're running at about 1,500 inches per second. And if you figure that we duplicated 150, we're loading 10 times as fast as we duplicate. So a 90-minute cassette takes about 7 seconds to load.
Wow.
And that it's not running on any surface as it runs through. It's all handled on air bearings. The tape is not rubbing against any surface.
And except for the motor on the supply reel, everything is pneumatic, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
And the reason for that is kind of obvious if you think about it. Magnetic fields and magnetic tape don't play well together normally, right?
And it's instantaneous as well. You get the immediate braking. You don't have the braking delay you have with a solenoid type brake. You put air out there, and it's right there. And it's just it's more immediate. It's cleaner, and it just keeps things going.
We have very little time for that splice to attach and get stuck. You may notice the splicer coming down. We only have found one tape in the world that will splice, stick, and take off and stay on there. And we have that specially made for us in Ireland. Except for the plastics, the cassette shell itself, splicing tape, everything else is domestically sourced here.
Excellent. And up on top of the machine is a good old Sony cassette. She's doing a little quick check to make sure
Yes,
it's
it's the
okay.
right program.
This will have
right.
probably 20 or 30 different programs running at one time, and each one of the stacks of tape that you see there will come to the operator with a short cassette, 30 seconds on it, and they are the first 10 or 15 seconds of that. Make sure they know what that control tape sounds like, and then before they proceed, they load one tape off of one of the pancakes in that stack and make sure it matches that control tape. It would be easy to cross it up and get the wrong tape with the wrong batch of shells.
Absolutely. Well, this is just looping back to what we'd already seen, so we can continue on the process. So we'll have a completed cassette that's loaded. You also design, print, create the J cards, the inserts that look, by the way, very much like your business card that you gave me.
Oh, wow.
You put all that inside what's called a Norelco box, the plastic case. And I understand there is an automated system that can do all that assembly. It wasn't running when I was there because the people back there were working on a smaller batch, and she told me the time it would take to set all of that up to automatically build them, they could do it by hand quicker for 100 or 50 or whatever she was working on at the time, as opposed to say 150 plus on a project.
Right.
So I didn't get to see the automatic assembly, but in the next video segment, the labeling section, we get to see the final step once it's assembled. And I grabbed this because I thought it was interesting. Well, actually, before we see the sealing, there's actually printing on the cassette itself. And that's what this machine
That's
is all about.
ultraviolet ink and printing. Right. The cassettes are fed in on a conveyor. You see it's an offset. It's called a dry offset process. We use ultraviolet ink. They're fed on from the left on a conveyor. They're printed on both sides simultaneously. They go through a little drying box behind that bottle there that you see. And when they come out the other side, completely dry. And This, like most of our automation equipment here, runs at the rate of 1 piece per second.
So it doesn't take long to go through a whole big box of cassettes.
No. A 100-piece job we can imprint in less than 2 minutes.
Sure. And we were kind of standing in the way. The young lady just ran around the back. I kind of snickered a little bit because I was kind of blocking her access. She had to keep doing a Chinese fire drill to get around the machinery.
Well, she
to get the
improvised.
next-
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's right. So
There
got in
used
there,
to be
a little blast of air to clean them off.
That's right.
Oh, wow. Chris, this makes me think of something that just kind of shocked me. I just realized I still owe the Columbia Record Club for buying about 10 cassettes, and I don't think I fulfilled my commitment.
Well, they only cost a
Columbia's
penny,
still
so
around, it's still around. You may get your chance to buy it again.
Okay, all right. They haven't come after me yet.
Okay.
well, the step after this is here we go. So these are assembled in the Norelco boxes with the card and everything. That assembly process would have been far to the left, but this is the plastic sealing machine, and this I thought was kind of interesting. How did this machine begin its life, Steve?
1938, this machine was wrapping packages of cigarettes, and it's still around. It's a Scandia wrapping machine. We looked at that thing and we said, package of cigarettes and a cassette in a Norelco box is about the same size, a little thinner with the cassette. So we adjusted the guide rails on it, drew it down to where it's actually able to wrap, and we're putting in a tear strip there above also. This runs also at the rate of 1 per second, and it now wraps audio cassettes instead of cigarettes. Much more healthy and much more entertaining, at least to us. And again, at the rate of 1 a second, but it does a terrific job. And then it outstacks them. There's an outfeed platform. We can outstack them into rows of 10 or 25 or whatever kind of carton they're going in. The operators don't even have to count them.
Excellent. Yeah, the
Wow.
video just looped, so that's why we came back live. Wonderful. So we've stepped through the entire production process. You've mentioned, well, how long has NAC been in business to begin with, at least as far as the cassette duplication process goes?
We have been in business 53 years this year. We began making audio cassettes in 1980, so that would make it 42 years, I guess. And we began duplication about 2000. We had done some in-cassette duplication on a limited basis before then, but we began music duplication in about 2005, 2006.
Excellent. So there have been a lot of projects that have gone through your doors, in and outs, to be distributed to the masses. There was a room you showed me, your archive room, which you likened to the scene in the Indiana Jones movie when the Ark is being placed into the warehouse.
That's right.
And
That's right.
in our next video segment, number 6, I think we get to see a little bit about what your project archive looks like. And apparently
Yes,
there is
each
a
one-
method to the madness here.
Oh, there is. It's alphabetical. Each one of those boxes contains a demo copy or an archive copy of the actual tape. It includes a copy of all the production papers. It includes copies of the J-cards or labels if we use labels. And it will be an imprinted cassette so we can see the imprint. No matter when we did it, we can go back and we can pull out a tape. We never destroy a master or the graphics materials. So no matter when we did it, we can go back and pull out an archive copy. We can test the quality of what we did, and we can pull a project you did 20 years ago, and we can start making you new copies of the same thing.
And there you go. So yeah, it just goes and goes and goes. So my first thought when I saw that was, I think I asked you, Steve, does somebody know where something is? And you mentioned there's a woman who works there who knows where everything is. And while
She
the
was
pallets
the
are alphabetical, okay.
That's right.
And the pallets are alphabetical, but you said
supervisor.
she can go up there and just within seconds, she can pull out whatever project it is that you need
she
to pull
can.
out of the archive.
I don't know how she does it myself. She has an organizational mind.
You must have an organizational mind. Absolutely. That is not a project for those who live on chaos by any means. So.
Not at all.
So you mentioned the machinery. There's pretty much nothing there that's newer than, say, 1990-ish or so.
That's right.
And you mentioned you've got a stock of the recording, the duplicating heads and other machinery. You have another floor of machinery that is available when you need parts or a whole machine in some cases. And our next video has a quick view of that. It's a sea of machines. Tell us what you have as far as what's in here, as well as how do you keep all this equipment running going forward?
These are cassette duplication machines like you saw on the production floor. There are well over 150 more duplication machines right there. Some we use for parts, but we don't really cannibalize those machines because we also bought up the parts inventories of all the factories who made them. As they went out of business, we bought their parts inventories. Here you actually see an Ampex 3200 quarter-inch full-track open-reel duplicator. There's an Ampex 1-inch mastering machine built on a 350 chassis, one of only 50 ever built in the world. And as we bought out our competition over the years, we found out that once they wanted to clear the floor, they wanted to clear the floor. And when we would go there with a semi to pick up, they would roll out all sorts of treasures and prizes and pop it in our truck and say, if you bought the tape equipment, you bought it all. When we bought out the factory that used to build those loading machines, and we got all of the inventory of parts that they had on hand to keep them running, just literally almost forever. And we also got brand new machines that were still wrapped that had never been shipped when the owner died and the state declared an auction. There are some of them right there, brand new machines that have never been fired up and run after they were built at the factory. So this is just one part of the reserve floor. We have 25,000 square feet on this floor, all full of equipment that can be added to what we use. We sometimes sell equipment to our customers or even our competitors who need it. And we do whatever it takes to keep the floor on. If somebody in Canada or in Germany is making tapes and they need more equipment, that's great because that helps us sell tape.
Absolutely. Now, I recall you saying you have a machine shop, or you were able to do some machining if necessary for parts?
We have a mini machine shop. Monty, I'll let you explain. We never use the last new metal part. Monty will tell you why.
we have a what we call a mini machine shop.
Yeah.
If we need something small, aluminum or even soft steel, we have one of the Unimat type machines up there, so we can mill off parts wise, and that can keep that going. And we are very fortunate to have a really good machine shop here in town. That if we get into the big stuff, just had to visit with them this morning for something. I could not get a roll off of or out of a bearing block, and so I take it over there. It was about a 2.5-inch diameter shaft, so it was a little bit big and heavy for us. So it took its trip over there, but. The small stuff we have one of the guys that works up there is an excellent little machinist, and he knows how to make that thing sing. And we can make a lot of the small parts right here in this in-house, and it works out very well for us.
Monty's pretty humble, but I will tell you also we can repair our own circuit boards in-house.
Oh yeah,
which is very important in equipment this old.
Yeah, electronic technicians are becoming few and far between. Parts level people, so we kind of treasure that particular skill, and it's easier to fix it than it is to change it sometimes.
Sure. So you told me at least on the mechanical side, you never use the last part you have.
The last metal part. We can replicate
Right.
a metal part. If we've got the original unworn part, we can replicate that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And some of that machinery also, on the electronic side, there are some of those that just run on EEPROMs. Are you able to, if you had to, could you reprogram an EEPROM? Do you have copies?
We have EEPROM programmers. We have editor assemblers that we have copies of the master programs that we've reverse engineered out of the chips, and so It's not so much black magic in there as we think.
But we are out on a limb. We know that the manufacturers of all this equipment are gone.
Yep.
And so if we're going to keep it running, we have to either repair the parts or make the parts to keep it running.
Yeah.
It's up to us. And so far, we've been able to do that, and we intend to stay able to do that.
Amazing. Any questions from you, Kirk?
I'm just here counting the number of different disciplines that it takes to make this run, right? So mechanical engineering, of course, electrical and electronic engineering, chemical engineering certainly involved here. That's something I know nothing about, and I enjoy hearing about it. There's thermal engineering involved here, magnetic engineering, and not just with the coating, but the quality checks that you guys were doing, and the kryptonite, my God, and then. And then you just mentioned the EPROMs, and they may be small programs, but I'm sure they're small, efficient programs, and they got to work right. So even software engineering goes into this. Holy Toledo, man! And all this under one roof. Do either of you know everything, or
knows pretty much everything. Now that's a simple question to answer. Monty knows pretty much everything, and I lie about what I don't know.
And if we get together, we're in serious trouble.
Never travel together.
Yeah, exactly.
Take separate flights everywhere you go. Yeah, vice president, president type situation.
Wow.
I'm actually going to give a little bit of a testimonial. We didn't show the production studio shots, but while I was there, you played an audio sample for me from cassette. Am I allowed to say who that was from that certain
Yes, you
large
are allowed
movie?
to say this. They do not mind our saying this. So
Okay. It was from Star Wars The Force Awakens, if I remember correctly.
that's correct.
Yes.
John
So it's
Williams.
John Williams, symphonic soundtrack going on. And I sat down and I listened. And to be honest, if I did not know that was being played from a cassette, I don't think I would have picked it out just on my own if somebody had said, what's the original source or what are you listening to?
Really?
The high end was there, the low end was there, it was clean, even on the quietest sections. And if I remember, there was no noise reduction on what I was listening to. I don't quite remember
That's
for
correct.
sure, but I don't think, okay, so there was no noise reduction. So even on the quietest sections, I started straining to listen for tape hiss or something. And yeah, I mean, way, way down, you probably could hear something in there if you really were trying to do it. But I was amazed at how good it sounded. So my hat's off to you for keeping cassettes alive, I guess, in a way, and producing such
This is that 330 Orsted Ferric Tape that we talked about earlier that is matched for those high-speed duplicators.
Gotcha.
It's the same oxide that you used to hear on 2-inch wide tape in recording studios, miniaturized for cassette. No oxide particle is more than 0.4 of a micron in length. It's a process, but it took what 2 years, 3 years to get that mastered,
2.5 years,
and it gives us a tremendously good product, we believe.
And the measuring tape that you guys use to check that 0.4 of a micron, that's pretty tiny.
Yeah. That's actually measured for us by the refining company. They mine out of the Masabi Range, and they refine it, and they give us a spec sheet on every batch of tape. Monty checks that. We get a pre-production sample of the oxide, which we try here, and after our approval, then the oxide, the dry oxide is shipped to us. But very closely controlled. It's not, we couldn't measure that, but we do insist on some pretty tight specs.
When you were talking about the duplicating process and how the machines are running at 100 and 150 inches per second or so, I think you said.
That's right.
And you said they could, because of the very tight gaps on the heads, would handle up to 8 megahertz. I was thinking this could handle video, and it reminded me there were some original stationary head video machines back. Some of the first experimentation was with that, but the reels, to do a half-hour show, the reels were just enormous, so that didn't work out so well. But that's amazing that they. I wonder if you used a term that I've certainly heard with tape, and that's Orsted, and of course I keep wanting to throw around my vast knowledge of tape recording and get in the word nanowebers somewhere in this conversation, and I haven't been able to do it yet. But is there a relationship between the measurement of an Oersted in the magnetic carrying ability of tape and the nanoweber that we hear on tape, on calibration tapes?
Alignment tapes, yeah.
Jump in here. All right. Nanoweber is a basic memory. It's remnants. It's how much the tape remembers. And Oersted is actually a very similar measurement, and there is a relationship that can be at a given frequency that can relate the two. But at different frequencies, you'll have a little bit different response in Oersteds. And that's why the Oersted's strictly a digital. Now we'll make it a digital type of measurement in that it is strictly a DC measurement of the tape saturation point.
And Monty, does that relate to what it takes to record the oxide?
Yeah. Whenever you look at a tape hysteresis curve, you'll find that there's a set of groups that come up, and the lines will go up, and then they'll come back and cross. And there's a window at 0, 0. Zero magnetic field and zero energy stored, and within that little window is the recording zone where we actually record. And we use the term Oersteds to mark the four corners. Actually it's the four corners, the DC corners of those four windows, and that sets the outlying blocks of where we can actually record within that. And the nanowebers is how much magnetism or remnants is on the tape as it's pulled over the head. That's how much voltage it will produce in the playback head.
Wow. Chris, you remember those the nanoweber measurements?
I was just running the script through my head. Standard Tape Laboratories reproduce alignment tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it 190 or was it a 210? That's the question.
What are we running?
Yeah.
250s?
Yep, they were right. The different nanoweber ratings depending on what you were aligning for. Wow.
My last thought about that, the oven that you guys, after you put the coating on, that you run it through, that holds the film in air. If I understand you, it doesn't run over any rollers inside the oven, and it takes 8-point-something seconds to get through there. Is this hot enough for pizza, or is it not really that hot?
No,
Not hot enough. Not hot enough for pizza.
You got half-mil base film, and you can't distort that. What, 242 degrees
Yeah, about
Fahrenheit?
240 degrees is where we keep it in there. Plenty of time in that the 48 foot that it does get well dried, and all the solvent is removed. And we test the film occasionally to see if there's any solvent left in it at the point in time. You can take a piece of the film and literally out and dry it and see if it decreases weight, and that tells you how much solvent's left in it.
So it won't cook a pizza, but it could reheat it.
Yeah, it would be good for reheating pizza.
It'll certainly get rid of all the solvent you have in your pizza.
Right.
It just may not. It may not cook it. But you think of pizza in 8.4 seconds, but your pizza would have to be hundreds of feet long and 6.5 inches wide.
And only microns thick.
Yeah, exactly.
I like thicker pepperoni than that, but that's just me.
That's right. It doesn't make Chicago pizza.
No.
Oh wow. This is just amazing. We talked for a second before the show, but okay, who's buying these cassettes? Because cassettes are not on my shopping list lately, and but neither are CDs, and neither are reel-to-reel tapes. I guess I buy music digitally these days. But if I go down, I live in Nashville. We got classic record shops here where you can buy and sell new and used vinyl. And of course, we still have a vinyl pressing plant here in Nashville, I believe. Who is buying cassettes these days? I'm not the demographic.
It's easy. The under 35 age group. They are people who don't buy them because of nostalgia, because they don't remember them from an earlier time. But it sounds good. The way we're doing this, you've got the good analog sound. You've got something tangible to hold in your hand. You don't download it from the ether sphere or whatever. It's basically the same appeal you have with a vinyl record. That's the same. It's pretty much the same group, same age groups. And as we said earlier, Monty and I are old fogies. We remember cassettes the first time around, but a lot of people are buying them. And the major record labels and the indies have decided there is a tremendous market out there for the audio cassette. Because last year, even with the pandemic and all the other craziness that went on, the audio cassette and the vinyl record outsold CDs in the commercial music field. That's what you need to know.
Wow. Well, I certainly listened to my share of cassettes driving up and down the roads of Kentucky and Tennessee and Missouri, doing going from radio station to radio station. In the stations, we typically used cassettes for air checks, and then for stations that played churches on Sunday morning. The preachers in churches would bring their shows in on cassette. Right. But man, I wore out some cassettes in that Toyota Corolla.
We're ready for the cassette decks to come back in cars. There are some rumors about that, but we won't spread those rumors.
That'll be great. That'll be interesting. You can't leave them in the car because the sun will bake them and then they're no good.
Right.
You got to protect them.
Can't leave them on the dashboard.
Steve, there was another project you told me about that I don't want to mention it because I'm not sure it was public or not, but a certain band was doing a release on two analog formats.
Yes, we can't. Well, a lot of them are doing releases only on vinyl or on tape now, and the two.
Okay.
We have one we can't talk about yet because they're still trying to figure out the timing of it, but it would be somebody everybody recognized. But just recently, you had Neil Young released his famous album, The Barn, which he recorded on analog tape to begin with, and then put out on vinyl and audio cassette. So there's a good example right there.
Yep. And I mentioned before the show started, Iron Maiden and their Number of the Beast album is being re-released on cassette as an anniversary edition as well. I haven't looked. Rush's Moving Pictures album is celebrating 40 years, and I haven't looked to see if that's on cassette as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. So there's definitely a market out there, and people are buying them.
Yes, sir.
This has been fascinating. Chris, I'll let you close it out with them when you're ready. I just want to say that when I hear cassette, I think of cassettes that maybe I recorded at home, maybe off of vinyl. Who knows where I got the music, and I was willing to put up with the quality that I got. But to hear you, Chris, say that you heard some John Williams music and you thought it didn't cross your mind that you were listening to a cassette. So the quality was there to make your brain, your ears enjoy what you were hearing, and that's a good sign. And as Steve and Monty both described, music grade tape and very well duplicated.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's exactly it.
Wow.
When you're listening to a recording and you can hear the fret pulls, you know you got the high end.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's our test. You sit there and test. You listen to a piece of music, and you got good, clean fret pulls in it. That's it. Or good, clean cymbals.
Right.
Chris, was there any further topic you wanted to cover here?
I've covered all of my notes. I was going to ask if Steve and Monty had anything else that we hadn't touched on that they wanted to include in our wrap up here.
I can't think of anything else. I will say this, when we build, Monty's come up with something, I'll just say this real quickly. When we build a master for duplication, we try the best we can to exactly replicate the original source that came to us. And we go to great extent to do that and to sample it back to our customers before we turn out a product. Monty, what were you
I just have to make the comment on our shipping room. All that big rows of boxes back there says "Made in the United States of America."
That's right.
And there's a pride in our product.
That's right.
A well-deserved pride. So
it can and it should be done here. That's right.
Yeah.
What we got a question. What are people playing these cassettes back on?
Tascam is building new decks. I believe Marantz is building new decks now, rack mount decks. A lot of people are building inexpensive little Walkman type players. Kobe, Jansen, several people like that. if you look at almost all those catalogs that come to you right before Christmas, there's some kind of cassette player in there. Not all of them are really good, but all of them are brand new, and there are some better decks coming out. So I think the equipment into things is kind of following the curve after the return of the media, the format.
Yeah.
I'll do a little research, Chris, and put them in the show notes.
Sure, that'd be great.
Good. If you have
Well, that's all I got, Kirk. Any
Good
other
deal.
questions for our guests or anything else we haven't covered?
I don't. This has been fantastically enjoyable. I know I'm going to go back and watch the video clips and hear, see if I missed anything. But thank you so much for the video clips, Chris, and for and Steve and Monty or whoever supplied those. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to do this.
Well, I'm glad you took the time to be with us and talk to our audience of broadcast and other content creation engineers. Chris Scherer, you want to take us out?
Sure. This has been the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. We present this monthly. We hope you'll join us each time. We'll post the replay on our YouTube channel, usually within a day. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine, whom we thank for the support. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE WEBxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G, that's attendance, just like attending a local chapter meeting. And that does it for this installment of the SBE WEBxtra from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks again to our guests, Steve Stepp and Monty Chaney of National Audio Company. And on behalf of Kirk Harnack, we will see you next month.